Hi, and welcome back to the Human First CEO series on LinkedIn Live. I'm Nick Maida, CEO of Gainsight, and I'm actually really thrilled to have a different conversation from some of the ones we've had to date. We've had some amazing CEOs on of many public tech companies like Okta and Slack and Twilio and DocuSign, and I've learned so much about how companies are trying to balance all their stakeholders in running their business. I'd like to actually have maybe a different conversation with the CEO, but maybe with a truly human first mission to what he's doing. So I want to welcome Mark Karake to the virtual stage, CEO of Impact Africa Network. Mark, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks, Nick, for having me. Really excited to be on the show.
And Mark, unlike maybe 90% of the people I've interviewed who are probably live streaming from somewhere in San Francisco or thereabouts, tell everyone where you are right now.
Yeah, I'm in Nairobi, Kenya, East Africa. That's where I'm streaming from.
That's awesome. And that's a long commute to San Francisco. So I guess virtual is helping you right now. But you did live in the Bay Area. So I'm really excited when we dive in to learn about what your organization's doing and sort of the mission, but also about your personal journey, because I think it actually helps connect a lot of the themes I've been trying to explore in this human first concept. But before we do any of that, you're a human being yourself. And I'd be really interested to know what, is there a quarantine in Nairobi right now? And what are you restricted from doing that you would like to go do once the vaccine's out there?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of really, for want of a better term, thought out a little bit in terms of the quarantining. So it was much tighter, probably a couple of months, about 6 weeks ago, and then they kind of started, easing restrictions. So for right now, if you want to go have dinner, you can. If you want to, so there's a curfew. I think it starts at 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. I think that's the only restriction that's there existing right now. Obviously, face masks and everything else.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it's pretty chill. I mean, you can actually get a lot of stuff done. It feels a little bit normal, which in these circumstances, you don't know how to feel about that. Because seeing all these second spikes in other parts of the world, and it's just like, and the truth is, every now and again you'll come across somebody who knows somebody who succumbed to COVID. So it's very real, but at the same time, it's strange. It's a strange vibe. I'm sure you guys are experiencing the same thing. And I would ask you, what's it like for you guys? Are you in San Francisco? Are you in the suburbs? Where are you based?
In Palo Alto. Yeah. So it's I think that California has been in various states of restrictions the whole time. So I think people are pretty adjusted to it. So I don't think it's as dramatic, but I think that obviously other parts of the country have gone through kind of crazy, everything's fine, and then crazy spikes, and then everything's fine. And I think one thing I've learned is whatever you believe about, why COVID's happening in some places and not others, and how it's related to something or not another, just wait a few weeks and your belief will be wrong, because then people will revert. And certain places will do well, certain won't. So we'll adjust, and obviously the vaccine's coming soon. So I want to talk about your story, and actually just to make it personal, in probably, my guess is July, you wrote you can tell me for sure, and that's in the summer, you wrote an amazing blog post, which I'd love to have you describe. And that blog post is actually how you and I got connected. And this is actually one of the kind of the magical things about Twitter and the internet is like, you and I had never met before, maybe would have never met. And yet you write this blog post. It really resonated with me, and, kind of helps bridge the world of tech, which you used to be in Silicon Valley, to the world of some of the impact you're having now. So tell us about the blog post and maybe a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, I mean, that the blog post I wrote, so it's part of actually a book that I'm working on, which is, I think somebody, I don't know if it was Hemingway who said, writing is easy. All you got to do is sit at the typewriter in his time and bleed. So I tell you, that's the truth, man. So I'm working through this book, and it was a chapter that I had come through at the time when, the George Floyd incident happened. I'd been through that chapter, wrote about my experience in San Francisco. And
is it called Last Black Man in San Francisco? Was that the?
Yeah, it's crazy because I don't know if I'd come up with that title for that chapter. I don't remember how the title came about, but it's very much. I remember when that movie came out. I know you've heard about the movie.
Yeah,
when the movie came out, it really resonated with me, the title, because that's what I felt like when I was because I lived in San Francisco for a couple of years, and I felt like I was the last black man in San Francisco. I mean, that's what it felt like. So when the movie came out, I was like, wow, that's amazing. How could you even, when something resonates with you so strongly, right? It's like, wow, I guess you feel heard. So anyway, I borrowed it, co-opted that into the title of that chapter that I put out as a blog post, essentially. And it was really about my experience as a black person living and working in the city, and the I guess isolated experience that was like, and just, going through a period where we started seeing the drumbeat of young black men being killed by police officers. And that coupled with just living in an environment which really just accepts you with plastic smiles, but doesn't embrace you as a human being. And one of the biggest mental challenges for human beings is just not being accepted. Totally. It is a huge deal, right? And so that was my experience, just living in an environment where everything on the surface looks great, but you're not really embraced by the society. And then you see this drumbeat of young black men like yourself being killed by police and nothing happening. And for me at that point in my life, I was just like, you know what, just put your head down, focus on your career. You've got to take care of your family. You got things that you gotta take care of. So you have this stoic mindset that nothing's gonna take me down. It's hard every time something crazy like that happens, but you just keep plugging away, Nick. But at one point, as I write in the blog post, one incident really kind of got me, and that was the I think it was Philando Castile murder. Mm-hmm. Right? And I remember waking up on that morning and looking at my phone and seeing that video and just being stupefied and just being shocked at what I was looking at, not believing what I was seeing, and then being in a daze on my way to work. And 90% of the time in every company I ever worked at in the Bay Area, I was the only black person, let alone African, right? So wow. I was an immigrant to the US, and then I re-immigrated back to Africa. So a lot of times I was the only black person in the room, right? And then here I was on that morning when I'm just completely in a daze, and I walk into a morning meeting with the sales team, and I'm hoping that somebody will bring it up so we can actually I kind of jumped ahead a little bit. I was taking my bus from, I live in the inner Richmond, and I was taking the bus into work, and I was in this, and there are all the young professionals on board, and I'm just looking around to see, is anybody kind of going to make eye contact and be like, yo, man, you're looking for connection, right? And everybody just seems so nonplussed and just in their own kind of world. Everything's cool, and I'm like, my goodness, do they get a different internet than I do? Because you could not see that video, and just continue life like normal. Yeah. you could. And so I get to work, and I'm like, okay, we go into this business meeting, and I'm hoping one of my colleagues will bring it up and be like, yo, did you see that stuff? So at least we can commiserate and nothing happens. And people are just talking about, small talk, chit chat, just as you would in a typical kind of meeting. And 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then we get into the agenda. And before I know it, the meeting's over, and I have to walk back to my desk and my area and just be prepare for a customer call. And I have to be mentally ready to handle that. And I have my colleague, my sales engineer with me, and we're kind of getting ready to do battle in the world of business. And my soul is on the ground. And here I am just thinking, holy cow, I had put myself in a position mentally to be able to handle whatever the world threw at me, just because I can't control what's out of my control. But that, I'll tell you, Nick, that day I really succumbed. I really realized I'm compromised, because I can't step into that business meeting, into that conversation, and just be fully on, right? And it was, that broke me, man. That was one of the ones I was like, Jesus Christ, this one's got me, Yeah. So I wrote that. So this is part of a chapter book I'm working on. So I wrote that out. I wrote that, and it's interesting. When George Floyd happened, I was like, yeah, man, maybe you should put this out. It's very apropos. You should put it out. But I was like, I don't want to kind of ride on the sadness or the tragedy. You're going through all these kind of. But one Saturday morning, I was like, yeah, man, you just gotta put it out. And I did, without any kind of intent of anything, just other than just, I just gotta my spirit was just telling me, you got to do it. So just do it. And I did. And I guess here we are.
Well, I think it seems like that article did resonate with a lot of people. It did with me, and that's how I was lucky enough to be connected to you. But I believe other CEOs also kind of shared it and probably made some connections for you as well. Is that right?
Yeah, amazing connection. So Jeff Winner at LinkedIn, we've developed a friendship, and he's actually come and done a talk.
Wow.
We have these fireside chats at our company, and he's actually piped in through Zoom and done a fireside chat for us. Amazing people. Like for me, the Bay Area was this very interesting dichotomous place. Two realities. One was the system was clearly, I want to say broken, for want of a better term. Like it didn't embrace everybody. There wasn't equity, but there are amazing individuals in the Bay Area. I always believe that, right? And so people like Aaron Levy at Box, you've heard him on this before, and people like Stuart Butterfield at Slack. Mm-hmm. I mean, I always knew from a distance, I always observed these people and I knew what they stood for. And Stuart is one of those guys who started talking about diversity and inclusion early.
Yeah, it was this year. Yeah, he's been talking about it forever. Yeah.
He's been on top of that platform for a minute and actually opened doors for people. And so I always knew about that, right? And I always knew that, when I started what I was doing, I believed that the Bay Area was a place we would get the support we needed for two reasons. One, because there were amazing people, amazing CEOs like yourself and the people I've mentioned already, who believed that, life is not just about self, it's about how you make a difference. Mm-hmm. And as when you get ahead, you should help other people. And in a very real sense, what I'm doing here, I want to say got validated in a big way by living in Silicon Valley, right? What I'm working on is bringing the best of Silicon Valley to this part of the world. And we can talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. I want to just kind of click on one thing you said just to remember it, which is that feeling at work like you didn't feel like you fit in and that you didn't feel accepted and didn't feel seen. I think that is one of the things we really are all trying to change, is that how do we make our employees feel like they can be their true human selves at work? I mean, that's why we talk about this human first concept. And I think there's so many different scenarios where probably employees don't feel heard or seen or like they fit in. So honestly, it was so great for you to share that story so that it can make it very real for people. And it let us all learn about, what you're doing at a high level, which I'd love to maybe have you kind of bridge this story from being a tech person who is going to go on to, be a tech executive and I'm sure do lots of great things, to then completely switching to something different with what you're up to now.
It's interesting. I haven't actually switched to something different. I'm actually doing that very thing in a different way.
In a different way, right? Yeah, that's a good way to say it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is Impact Africa Network? Basically, technically, we're a startup studio, mm-hmm. but in reality, we're a movement. And in essence, what we do is we're bridging the 0 to 1 gap between young talent on the continent and the innovation entrepreneurship opportunity. So if you think about the Bay Area, it's got an infrastructure of support, cultural belief systems, networks, that whole thing, funding. So a kid coming out of Stanford has been you're going to do a startup or you're going to work at one. I mean, it's obvious, right? And if you look at the kids, Africa is the youngest continent on the planet, and the kids coming out of university here, and everybody's talking about, become an innovator, become an entrepreneur, because Silicon Valley has infected the world, right? And over here, there's so many opportunities to solve big problems, but the gap between I'm a college grad or I'm a young person and I'm going to actually get to traction, right? To get my idea to traction is a chasm.
Yes.
And so a lot of people are just on the sidelines. There's this whole kind of rah, but they're not getting a shot. And here's a crazy thing, Nick. When I started looking at what the problem was here vis-a-vis that, when I dug deeper, here's the crazy thing. The people who are getting opportunities to launch startups and build their ideas, it looked like Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
It was young white people were taking...
In Africa?
In Africa, yeah.
Oh, wow.
In Kenya, it's a huge conversation. So when I looked at that in 2017, and I saw what was happening, I knew exactly what it meant, right? Because I was living it in the Bay Area. Here I was, I had a glass ceiling. There was only so far I could go. When I looked up at the industry titans, nobody looked like me. There was nobody I felt comfortable reaching out to and saying, hey, could we have a coffee? Because that's how you get put on, right? At the end of the day, you need people who can open doors for you. I mean, that's just how this thing works. Somebody has to believe in you. You got to believe that you can do it. And if you don't see people like you, it's kind of just a bridge too far. And so when I looked at our ecosystem, and I was like, oh my goodness, the startups that have received the most funding are all expatriate led. And there's a truism in our market where people are like, yeah, if you want to get funded, you gotta get a white co-founder. And that's like a thing people have embraced. And so having been in the Bay Area and understanding we live in the techpreneur age, what does that mean? That means that the tech entrepreneurs are the emperors of our day.
Yeah.
Right. So if I was to project from that point where I was looking at this, where we are now, 10 years out, the people who are going to own and who are going to create the wealth, who are going to own the digital infrastructure and all those businesses that will be built, will basically not look like me again. And basically, we were walking straight into digital colonization 2.0, right? And that, to me, was very real because it wasn't like an abstract thing. I had seen it in the Bay Area, right? I knew what was coming. And there's just no way I could sit on the sidelines and let that happen, because here's what that means. What it means is that the opportunity we have in terms of the folks who can build wealth, who can create influence, who can do the things that those people will influence our civics and our politics in the future. Yes. And I'm talking 10, 15 years down the road. And so there is an opening here for us to take our young people and give them a platform that they can imagine a new future, right? And so for me, it was like this tech innovation entrepreneurship thing is not just about building startups. We have an opportunity to actually bring another generation online with the right values, with the right kind of belief system. Right now, we are beholden to a cultural, a social political, a cultural infrastructure around social, economic, and politics, really, that is, if you want to make it, you gotta get, it's basically, you got to get into the political game and get connected and start playing the corruption kind of, what we call it, like state capture deal. Mm-hmm. That's basically what people believe. Like over here, you don't see a lot of people starting from scratch and making it. That's not a thing people see.
Yeah.
You start and get put on. Somebody opens a door for you. Somebody's, you know what I'm saying? And it's always about how do we game the system? Right. It's not how do we put value. And so for me, it was like, okay, with innovation and entrepreneurship, basically, you can go create value and you don't need permission.
Yeah.
And in 10 years, you can say, look, I did it. So other people can be like, wow, there's another alternative path to success. Yeah. Right now, the success narrative is you've got to be corrupt. You've got to kind of, you got to luck on something. You got to game the system. We need to change the narrative. And so for me, because tech moves so fast, in 10 years, which is a young person's first phase of, you can manifest success. Yeah. You can change the narrative. You can give people a different aspiration. And so our people need to see people like them succeeding, Nick, because that's when they can say, you know what? I don't have to lie down in the trough with everybody else. I don't have to go down this path. We can do something different. And so for me, that's basically what I'm working on, man.
That is unbelievably inspirational, and the connection both from where you were in Silicon Valley and also, the future that you're trying to create. I mean, it's so visceral as you describe it. Talk a little bit about some of the companies that are coming out of your venture studio. What types of companies? I don't know if there's some examples you want to throw out, because I'm sure it's new for some people watching about what does a startup in Africa look like. So,
so we just launched our first commercial brand. It's called Jenga School. So basically, it's our version of Lambda School. There's a huge demand for STEM talent, top quality STEM talent, and there isn't, the right type of programs, education programs, to pipeline that talent into the labor force. So we just did so that's one that we just launched in June. We have a couple of cohorts running right now. And one of the things we're building around this is what we call it LinkedIn for STEM. Basically, what you have in this market is you have huge demand for talent, right, and a huge demand for for students to get into the program. So we launched in June. We have had 250 plus applicants. Mm-hmm. We only have converted about 5% of those into paying students. And that wasn't a surprise for us. And the reason why Lambda's taken off, because they figured out the student funding side through the ISA model. The ISA model is not necessarily going to port very easily to our market. We have to figure out solutions that work for us in terms of providing funding for that talent to actually pipeline through. Right. And so we always knew that was the case. Get in the market, and then you figure out your engine later, right? Your growth engine. And so we now, as we've been going through this process, we're building this platform that is basically a way for all this pent-up demand talent to be surfaced for companies to sponsor them into the program. So that's something that we're building. We're really excited about that. We're working on that platform. We're talking to companies. They're excited about, like, yeah, that makes total sense. I can even sponsor my own employees. So basically, from a company's perspective, I can invest in talent. And check this out. To go through the program, we have a 12-month data science and AI program. It's 12 months. It's part-time. It's quite rigorous. PhD level instructors. We actually pipeline in guest lecturers from companies like Netflix to come and talk about stuff that they're doing with data science and AI. So it's top notch. It's not an Africa thing. It's world class. And so so you compare that with Lambda is $30K to go through the program, $30,000. For us, it's $2,900, right?
Wow.
Okay. But even at that level, you have all this talent that can't access it, right?
They can afford that. So you have to have somebody fund it. Yeah.
And this is a crazy part. When they get on the other side, they can get hired and make that money in a month. That's like a monthly salary. And now you're seeing international companies looking for talent even here locally. So the liquidity on the other side, on the employment side, is amazing. But it's $2,900. So in any case, we're building this platform that will surface the talent, that will showcase a lot of the things that we believe in our program in terms of how you build quality talent. There's a lot of cool stuff we're doing with that. And a couple of other things that we're taking a run at is fintech. Fintech is huge. If you look at, so one of the things I'm really excited about is we want to build a financial well-being partner for the new generation. So kind of like Wealthfront, but for our market. Yep. We want to drive that financial literacy, but give tools for people to do that. I think that's huge. The other one too, in the same space is just, business banking, right? I mean, our banking, it is a marketplace that's waiting to be taken over, because the legacy players, the incumbents, they're really struggling with making the digital flip, and so there's a lot of opportunity there. There's a bunch of other stuff we're working on too. I'll just tell you one more. One is really about the process by which taking the entrepreneurial process and digitizing it in a way that people can actually stepwise do the right thing at the right time. So taking all the information that's all over the place and making it a process, so that, not everybody can make it to YC, or not everybody, you know what I'm saying? And not everybody has exposure, and information is just diffuse, right? There are books, there's this, there's that, there's the other. Can you simplify this for me so I can de-risk my idea and get to traction? So we're working on that. If we can solve that, if we can build an elegant solution for that drives engagement, there's so much potential for that, because again, it's this pent-up demand of youth, of young people who need tools to get them going. Yeah. So those are a few things we're working on.
Those sound like amazing ideas and very exciting. And the link between sort of where you were here and then what you're trying to do, it really is very tangible and meaningful. There are a couple of things I'd love to maybe have the audience take away just from your experience. One is, if folks are energized by your vision, what are the ways people in the maybe, kind of the tech world in the US can help? Are there things you'd like to ask from people watching?
Yeah, fundamentally, what it always comes down to is we need the opportunity to exist, which comes down to funding, right? So if we don't have the funding, it's all talk. Yeah. And so fortunately, a lot of people just get it in the Bay Area. They're like, okay, this is a great idea. Let's back it. So folks can step up and do that. So there's a couple of ways people can support us. And we built a couple of different programs. One is just for ordinary folks who get excited about what we do. We have a micro donations funding program. So it works like Netflix. For $20, $30 a month on a recurring basis, you can actually support us. So if they go to impactafrica.network/microdonations, that's where they can get to that. The other one is what we call our 100 Founders Challenge. And when I started down this path, I always knew that Silicon Valley folks, they're amazing people who love backing ambitious, high impact ideas. And I knew they would get it because they had been through this process before. Somebody bet on them. This is what people do in the Bay Area. And so we created this fundraising campaign called the 100 Founders Challenge. And essentially it's for folks who've been on your show, some of the folks who've been on your show who've actually had an exit or had some success. In terms of their philanthropic giving, they can actually support us with bigger amounts. And so, like I said, we've had folks like Aaron, like Stuart, like Jeff, yourself, you're a supporter of ours, which is super exciting. And so we're building that roster of champions, I would call it. And part of why that matters so much, even beyond the money, is really the credibility it gives us. Even here in our market, people here are not used to seeing an idea take shape. And so you're either successful or you are not. There's no like you have a chance of being successful. So nobody opens doors for you. The support infrastructure for ideas is non-existent. So to start from zero to get traction is so difficult because you know how it is. You need people to kind of open doors for you, kind of like, support you and do all those things that are those intangibles. Right?
Absolutely.
That make things work. And so for here, now that we have people like yourself and all those names I've mentioned, when we backing us up and we can speak about that, people are like, okay, let's actually support this thing. Let's actually, locally here.
Yeah, totally.
And so credibility is a huge deal. So our 100 Founders Challenge, if folks want to kind of support us, they can go to impactafrica.network/founders challenge. And or just reach out to me, Mark at impactafrica.network, and let's have a conversation. The other thing that is really cool, I gotta say this, is beyond money. It's really about the shifting mindsets. And this is what really excites me because I used to, when we got started, I used to tell our young people that people in Silicon Valley are amazing. They will make time, they will come, they'll give. And they were like, people don't do that here. Why would somebody from across the planet do that? Because I knew what they didn't know. And so when we are able to host Craig Newmark, founder of Craigslist, right, who came and did a talk for us, and he shifted the mindset of our people because he talked to them about, I started this company, but I found my strength was to become a customer service rep. So that's what I did. That's like, what? You know what I mean? So people feel confident. They're like, wow, this is a team game. It's not about a me game. It's a we game. And so shifting the mindset, and when Jeff comes and talks about leadership, and so hosting people for our fireside chats, that's money. Yeah. Okay. Because there's something that happens to somebody when I'm looking across and I'm like, this person is talking to us. That means we are somebody. That means we've earned their respect, so we need to step up and deliver. So our fireside chats is another thing that I want people to come and talk to us and just deposit that drop them gems. One of the things we're doing with that, we actually have a very exciting campaign called Power to Our Women. And one of the things we believe at Impact Africa is, I fundamentally believe, and I wrote a blog about this also, is that when I looked at our market and I realized that when these startups emerge from the studio, they need the nurturing. Right. And the people who are best positioned, I felt, to actually drive that early stage growth and put it together were women. Because they had these qualities and these kind of like just the way women are, and also in our market, there's something. If I were just to call a spade, in our market, guys are under a lot of pressure, and so they tend to kind of look at too many things at the same time, right? So they look to have a main job and then have a side hustle, and that side hustle generally is just a money-making scheme. Women tend to focus more and just be like, I'm just going to work on this. And they're more patient, if you will. And so that's the kind of person you need to work on if you're building an early idea. And they're very nurturing and all those things. Long story short, we have this thing called Power to Our Women. I wrote a blog post about it. I said, this is my thesis. When these companies emerge out of the studio, we will work with women and give them those leadership positions in the early phases of our startup so they can lead that growth. This gives women a platform to become leaders as these companies grow. And so I wrote that blog post a year and some change ago, and I put it out. And here's the crazy thing. Jenga School, when it got out of the studio and started growing, we hired an operations manager, and she fit the mold. And it wasn't even like something I was programming.
Right.
I actually realized that later, and I was like, holy cow, it's actually happening. So I updated the blog post and talked about Esther, who's our operations manager at Jenga, and we were like, we need to actually have conversations around this. So we launched a live cast called Power to Our Women. So it ran every Friday, and we started reaching out to successful women in the Bay Area and in other parts of the world, business leaders and change makers. And we've been having these conversations with them to come and talk about what it's like as a woman to go through the process of, your career and how to become as an entrepreneur or as a business leader and share some of the experiences. And it's been amazing. So basically we saw what you were doing, Nick, and we were like, yeah, we have a story to tell too. And this is actually something exciting. And so we have a live cast that happens, I believe it's 9 a.m. in Pacific time or 8 a.m. now that there's daylight savings. But we've had amazing guests. We've had 4 episodes right now. It's a fantastic platform. So we want people to come and talk to us, to help us believe, to help people here feel like to learn, right? To disabuse ourselves of the assumptions people have when they're young of what it takes to build anything, right? You always have these crazy assumptions, but when you hear it from the horse's mouth and they just tell you like this, it's like it simplifies everything. So yeah, that's
it's incredible. I wish we could go on for much longer. Your energy and your passion and your vision are just truly inspirational. It was so lucky for me that I read that blog post, months ago and got to connect with you, and lucky for the audience as well. Because I would say that the whole point, the reason I do this whole series is being a human being and treating the people you interact with as human beings and being successful in business are not at odds with each other. They can work together. And I think what you are doing is literally living proof that that's possible. So we're up on time now, Mark, but this has been amazing. I know everyone's really enjoyed it. I really appreciate what you're doing. I know all of us are excited to support you, and thanks for doing what you're doing, and keep us posted as you go forward.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nick. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much to everyone else as well. Really appreciate it. Talk to you soon. Thank you.